So yeah, when I heard the theme for this year, Kiss the Earth, the first image I thought of was the Buddha, well, just right before he woke up. The very last thing he did, or that almost brought about his awakening, was to reach down and touch gently the earth. He didn't, so he wasn't aloof in his head, he wasn't gripping on earth, he was just like gently touching the earth. He reached down, touched the earth, and at that point he remembered the whole of his previous lives. It's called that moment of calling the earth for witness. But what the story tells us is that at that point he remembered all previous lives, and with all that history, with all that memory, he crossed the gate, if you want, from non-awakening into awakening. So yeah. And also, so I thought, maybe we can talk about that moment, that remembering previous lives and rebirth. Because as Westerners, I don't think we understand rebirth. I don't think I do. And I don't think we have to either. But something we definitely have to acknowledge is that it's very embedded in Buddhist thought and in awakening itself, because it's with awakening or through awakening that we free ourselves from the endless cycle of rebirth, which is often called samsara. Perhaps you would have heard this word, samsara, which is the image of being trapped in this repetitive cycle of rebirth, in this kind of addictive or slaving re-becoming. And it's in this re-becoming that this endless cycle of rebirth that is characterized, or perhaps is powered by neurotic desire, blinding delusion, and reactive hatred. So it's this way of being, or re-being, re-becoming, around these pushes and pulls, this neurotic desire, this seeing the world through topsy-turvy views, and through like this reactive hatred. So it's the idea of awakening, being placed in this as a gate out of this way of being or reacting in the world is very important. It's very crucial in a way, and in fact was definitely the motivation for Gautama to wake up to reality, because he saw the existence of suffering, and he longed to find a way out of that suffering, and that launched him into spiritual search and culminated in awakening. This image, like how remembering previous lives brought about or aid to awakening. Why does it do that? I thought I'd give a go, speculate for a few minutes. And the first thing I thought of is to understand how deeply rooted this conditioning is, how deeply rooted this desire, this delusion, this hatred is in our bodies, in our consciousness. First is acknowledging that these responses in a way are natural, It's not a moral judgment on the existence of these responses or reaction to things. Because, of course, to survive, we do need to push away danger and to look after, have a motivation to look for comfortable places, for food, for, to reproduce, etc. So as a creature's pro-existence, we are almost coded to have these reactions. The problem or the conflict is that these reactions do lead us to experience suffering that we can be free from. But yeah, we have to acknowledge how deeply rooted these things are. One of the things I've been recently almost puzzled by is behavioral genetics. And I've been puzzled, I suppose, because I struggle to believe that part of my identity, that my reactions or that my behaviors, from very superficial to perhaps very deep ones, that are coded in my DNA, that I am. Well, and I'm finding that difficult because that's not within my control. Perhaps some of my mannerisms, the way I think, the way I behave. We're very keen on understanding and accepting that to be a fact in the animal kingdom. We want to quiet dogs to what's the word? Well, to make babies so we can have a quiet dog ourselves. We know that there's aspects of behavior that are genetically conditioned, if you want. But my ego, my self-identity, my self of independence and being an individual, it really is challenged by the idea that some aspects that I consider to be me, because I want them and I have control under, it's, that is perhaps not so true. And I think there's an aspect that in Buddhism where it is approached through, or is evoked, if you want, through the language of rebirth and rebecoming. I see a connection to understanding that there is aspects of our consciousness that transcend, if you want, or that transcend this human lifespan. Well, at least backwards. If you pass, or if you look at the past, you can see that we can see that our behavior is conditioned way beyond our lifetime. Before my birth, I've been becoming. Is that a sentence? I've been becoming before my life. Yeah. And also understanding that, that the consequences of our actions will transcend this current life. Yeah. And we can see that clearly through, in fact, I am here being informed by the Buddha's word, by the Buddha's thought, by the Buddha's teachings. And he was 5,500 years ago. So, and we could all think of writers and political figures, or even family members that precede our lifetimes and generations that have influenced the way that we think and see things currently. So yes, it doesn't take much for you to see, to look back into the past and see what has conditioned our present, and to make the jump that the consequences of our actions will transcend our lifetime. And so we need and we can address that somewhat. So yeah, that's the first thing I thought from. It helps to look into our previous lives if you want to see how deeply embedded this conditioning is, this greed, hatred, and delusion. Where does it come from? Our behavior and our habits. We talk in Buddhism about samskaras, which are like deep, those kind of deep responses or deep habits. And the second bit is, to also recognizing our dharmic responsiveness. To recognize that our longing also to wake up to the truth also precedes this lifetime. That desire to wake up to the truth and being more aligned to wisdom, to compassion, it also precedes this life in other people's lives. You know, there's been Buddhists for 2,500 years, and actually the notion of wake up to the truth precedes Buddhism itself. You know, so that's also quite natural. That's also important to remember. There's not just this neurotic desire, this blinding delusion, this reactive hatred that's been around for ages. That is kind of natural in us, but also our desire to wake up, to transcend, to not being slaved by or to this way of becoming. Which is also what happened at that point of the Buddha's calling of the earth and bringing witness. He saw how he's been practicing for lifetimes, that he's been putting some effort through lifetimes. And so I think it's this element of also recognizing how far we've come as individuals, but also as a society. I mean, isn't it incredible that we can be in a field and to be in relationship to thinking and practicing that expands our consciousness and try to align ourselves more to truth, to compassion, to wisdom, and that we are free to do so, and that is allowed and that's encouraged, and we have conditions. And that we, you could have been doing all sorts of things today. You could have been doing a flirting workshop, or I don't know, wrestling someone in the mud. I don't know. But you are here just like out of the receptivity. There is a search for meaning, if you want, from transcending, for engaging with our consciousness. So also, I think, it's important to connect with also the depth or the longevity of that desire, that dharmic responsiveness. The Buddha is often, one of his epithets, I think it's like it's been like an elephant mind or something like that. Actually, Divan is gone. He could correct me at this point, but and it's because apparently elephants have a very good memory. They have a very good spatial awareness and remembering where they've been, where they travel, etc. And that's because remembering is a very important spiritual faculty, if you want. In fact, in mindfulness, a big aspect, I think, on mindfulness is to remember, to recollect the purpose of what you do in the practice. You know, you get distracted, but you constantly recollect and bring yourself back into the task in hand, which is cultivating awareness and mindfulness and being present, being in your body, being with your emotions, with your mind, heart. so yeah, we need to kind of remember and constantly make that effort of, bringing our minds back to our ideals, to our purposes, to our values, and constantly aligning our actions to those ideals and to those values. So yeah, we can see that from the past, we need to kind of acknowledge our conditioning, our previous re-becoming, to inform our present decisions, to best inform or condition the future that we desire, that it was aligned to our values and ideals. So yeah, just to finish, I think why I'm talking very briefly about rebirth, and I guess my advice, if you want, is to consider taking seriously rebirth. And within that, you might be navigating between, I put here, literalism versus mumbo jumbo, okay? One is to go into the literal path of like, yeah, there's loss of lives, and if you speak if you speak badly of other people in this life, you'll on your rebirth you have bad breath, a smelly breath. That's one of the things that you sometimes hear, you know, like if you kick or if you're very lazy, you'll be reborn as a lazy creature, a lazy animal, something. So you can go into that end of almost knowing what happens with your future rebirths. But also would be like that was pure mumbo jumbo. You only have one life, and which I think it would also just narrow. It would limit you to acknowledge, the depth of how rooted our conditions are, like greed, hatred, and delusion. But also, it might limit you the sources of inspiration or motivation for you to fare the Dharma life, to practice, and to live aligned to your ideals. Yeah, it's just a question whether if it's just matter. If I put here, is matter all that matters? Yeah. Sometimes we think that only our bodies, only our minds that are physically witnessable is all that we can see, and therefore it's all that matters. Well, it's just like, again, that's another hard thing to get your head around. Well, I found difficult to get my head around, like quantum physics, to understanding that how much actually, that the great majority of matter of the universe is actually black matter, which means like we don't really understand it, we don't really know. I don't know if you've seen the most recent like discoveries within physics, but they're just realizing that in the very basically the universe or the physical world does not operate under the rules that we think they do. Even the very basic kind of physical rules. There's more unknown than knowns. Anyway, kind of physics. I'm not going to go into it, but the other reason why I encourage you to consider taking seriously rebirth is because it challenges individualism. One is because we might have been, or we will be more than one person, and also we have a lot more in common than not. I guess I could try to go into that a lot more, but I won't. But I believe it challenges individualism, because it forces us to take on seriously that the consequences of our actions definitely transcends ourselves, our little narrow selves, and that you think who you are, and etc. As soon as you're starting to engage with the unknown, you have to take others into consideration. So I think it's harder to be individualistic when you bring a perspective of more lives. Yeah. And I put here, without facing previous becomings, true and deep awakening might not be possible. Yeah. I guess the fear there, what I'm trying to warn is just like to avoid bypassing aspects of ourselves. Sometimes we might think that, oh well, it's not. I don't have those deep roots reactions of way of beings. We might, if we don't kind of address the whole of ourselves, kind of permanent change or insight will have a limited effect. And the last image I want us to, great, thank you, Lucy. The last image I guess I wanted to bring with this touch in the earth is also to remember that, that we have almost the whole universe supporting us. We have the whole of our previous lives and efforts behind us, and that the whole universe is supporting us. And actually this is a mudra that you see the Buddha quite often being portrayed, with this mudra. So touching the earth. But there's also a Buddha, no, it's not here, represented in images. It's which is dark blue, and he's called Akshovya, which is the unshakable. And it's because that's what happens when you're deep in memory, light supported by the earth, you are less shaken, or not less shaken, you're unshakable in samsara, you're less shaken, less thrown by this neurotic desire and blinding delusion and reactive hatred. So when you're struggling, remember you've got the universe supporting you in your practice. Thank you.